Hello, I like games. My friend also likes games. I like lore. He also likes lore. So that got us thinking,
You son of a bitch!
why don't we discuss lore and popular fan theories? And so, we begin with a childhood favourite, a game that swept the market. No. A game that actually deserves a remaster. All of them. Yes, I'm talking about the beloved Jak and Daxter trilogy, a trilogy of games that started back in 2001 and I still believe 25 years later are the defining moment of the PS2 era. And with that being said, let's get into a brief summary of the trilogy. We begin the game with Jak and Daxter going to Misty Island, a place they were told never to go to by Samos, the Green Sage. Upon arrival, they discover that lurkers are being led by a mysterious, evil-looking figure, and after hiding and listening, the duo think they escape undetected, but whilst they converse about the precursor junk, the object suddenly lights up for Jak. The discovery is cut short when the lurker attacks them and Jak throws the item at the lurker, causing its death. The blowback from the explosion causes Daxter to fall into a dark eco silo. When he emerges, he has been transformed into a new furry orange creature and is not happy about the change. The duo talk to Samos the next day, who is not all too pleased with the situation and tells him that the only person that could be able to help Daxter return to human form is one known as Gol Acheron, a dark eco sage but lives far to the north of the continent. Now, it would be easier to get there if the teleportation rings were working from the other sages, but suddenly these teleportation rings no longer work and the sages have disappeared. This is how the adventure begins, and the duo work their way up north while freeing the sages in order to get to Gol. Once Jak and Daxter reach the Red Sage's hut, Gol reveals himself and we finally get a face to the name. This is the same person we saw on Misty Island. He is the one leading the lurkers, and he reveals his master plan. He plans to open the large Dark Eco silos and flood the continent with Dark Eco, and he also captured the sages in order to power up a precursor robot that will enact his dastardly evil plan. Realizing changing Daxter back into a human is no longer an option, the duo decide that they must put a stop to Gol once and for all. After Jak and Daxter ascend Gol and Maya's citadel, a fight between Jak and a precursor robot piloted by the villains commences. With the help of the four sages, Jak is able to battle this giant precursor robot, and it is discovered that when all four eco combines, they form what is known as light eco. Jak is able to harness this light eco, and with its power, he creates a devastating blow. He destroys the robot with Gol and Maya still inside. The game ends with our group opening a large precursor gate, which will eventually lead us into Jak 2. The game begins with us sitting aboard a strange looking device known as the Wrist Rider. This is the machine we found behind the precursor door at the end of the first game. Once the machine is activated, bad things begin to happen and monsters start appearing to fly through the portal. We are also greeted by a giant monster head and the group begin to panic. In the panic, Jak hits the button and launches the vehicle towards the monster and through the portal. While flying through the portal, the ship is hit by some sort of lightning strike, causing the ship to break apart, forcing all the group to go off in separate directions. Just before entering a white light, Jak is told by Samos to find himself. After crash landing, they arrive in a strange new place and nothing to them is recognisable. Jak is immediately arrested by Errol and Daxter escapes the conflict. We then see Jak getting tested on for something called the Dark Warrior program, which involves him being pumped full of Dark Eco. However, the test is abandoned after it is a failure and Jak is left for dead. Daxter eventually finds Jak's body and attempts to wake him up by stating that it's been 2 years of searching for him, to which Jak does not seem to respond. Jak wakes up violently and his first words ever are, "I'm going to kill Praxis," which was a shock to players as Jak was a mute in the first game and had no voice lines whatsoever. This new corrupted Dark Eco version of Jak scares Daxter to the point where Daxter thinks Jak is going to kill him. However, Jak quickly realises who he's talking to and quickly snaps back to regular old Jak. As the pair escape back onto the streets of this strange new city, they discover an old man with a little boy who has an amulet around his neck. The old man regards the boy as important, but Daxter doesn't see it given the boy's small appearance. As the game progresses, we discover that Kira is secretly working as a zoomer mechanic for the stadium but is also working on a mysterious project behind the curtain. It is now that we are given our first introduction to the legend known as Mar, the founder and leader of Haven City. We are told that he is the reason for the eco-grid and the shield wall that protects the very city. As Jak and Daxter search through the remains of an old part of the city, we discover Samos's hut from the first game, but it is old and destroyed. This is where the pair discovered that we have actually travelled into the future 300 years. After making this discovery, we are sent to find the leader of the underground, known as the Shadow. When we find out who the Shadow actually is, it turns out to be a younger version of Samos. Jak and Daxter are quite reasonably confused by the whole situation, and just to add to it, we also find out that the young boy they found earlier on carries the Seal of Mar, which highlights that he is actually heir to the throne. Continuing to work for contacts in Haven City, Jak and Daxter are tasked with going to the sewers to retrieve a ruby key held by a statue of Mar, but the key is not stated what it is used for. Okay. A quick little editor's note. I know this video is skipping a lot of lore. I know that. I understand that. However, I would like this video to be less than 2 hours long. Let's get back to it. So the group discover an underground precursor temple that is where the heir of Mar must face the trials of manhood. However, the statues sense that the boy is too young for the trials and begin to close the door. Jak takes it upon himself to go in and complete the task instead. After his success, Jak will be given an item of extreme power, and we are given some backstory on the metalhead. Jak wasn't interested and stated that the precursors are simply confusing him with someone else. Towards the end of the game, it is revealed that the old man is actually the metalhead leader and has been leading 2 lives in order to give the metalheads an advantage in the war. After a climactic battle where Jak ultimately succeeds and defeats the metalhead leader, Jak and Daxter believe they have saved the planet yet again. However, destiny now must be fulfilled. Kira reveals that her secret project was actually rebuilding the Rift Rider that we saw at the start of the game, and what we must now do is send the young boy and the young Samos back in time before the precursor legacy. This is where we find out that the young boy is actually a younger version of Jak, and Jak is actually from this time and not the past.
Big ball of wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
The young Jak gives the older Jak his Seal of Mar, and the young Jak and the young Samos go back to before the precursor legacy in order to start the cycle all over again. Yes, I know it's quite confusing, but when is time travel ever not confusing? And so by the end of the game, all the group celebrate their victory, and Jak states that he thinks he is done with adventures. Phew! One more game to go. Let's get to it. The game opens to us seeing a desert with a flying Crimson Guard dropship going over the sand dunes. However, this Crimson Guard ship is blue, so I guess it's the Blue Guard? Or is it the Freedom Guard? It's the Freedom League, that's what it is. The Freedom League, who are the successor to the Crimson Guard. We discover that Jak and Daxter are actually being exiled to the desert, and we're introduced to a new character, Count Veigar. Veigar explains the reasoning for the exile, as he and the city believe Jak is responsible for the metalheads invading the city in the first place. Now we know that isn't true, but crew unfortunately died in the second game, and they needed someone else to blame, I suppose. Once Veigar and his crew leave, Jak and Daxter are left to their own fate and begin to walk aimlessly about the desert. It is here through a series of flashbacks we find out the metalheads have invaded multiple fronts of Haven City, and that Jak's image is being ruined by rumours of his possible involvement. Whilst Jak and Samos are discussing matters atop the palace, it is suddenly hit by a bombardment seemingly from the metalheads. This causes the destruction of the tower. However, Jak and Samos manage to escape just before the crash, and it is revealed that under the tower itself there was some sort of precursor temple. Coming back to the present day, Jak and Daxter have fully succumbed to the desert, but luckily due to a homing beacon, they've been picked up by wastelanders. After Jak and Daxter have mended from their endeavour, we are introduced to yet another character, Demas, the King of Spargus. Spargus itself is a city run by exiles. As a way to earn his place within the exiles, King Demas decides to send Jak and Daxter out into the desert to pick up artifacts, as they might be useful for the upcoming war. When Jak returns successful, King Demas explains that he's actually managed to pick up a piece of Mar's ancient armour, and King Demas himself allows Jak to keep these bracers as he will need them. Back in Spargus, Jak and Daxter come across a monk who's obsessed with death, and they explain their reasoning for this is due to astrological body known as the Daystar, which is coming towards the planet and is about to bring about the end times. So oh boy, Jak has another end times event to deal with. On their adventures, Jak and Daxter discover another precursor temple, and due to their success in the challenges, Jak is given light eco as he will need all the help he can get for the battles ahead. Whilst out in the desert, Jak and Daxter meet up with Ashlyn, who explains the dire situation of Haven City and tries to bring Jak and Daxter back as a way to help the citizens of the city. However, Jak, seemingly pissed off, which I think is a fair reaction, doesn't want to help Haven City and decides they are on their own. Ashlyn, obviously not happy with Jak's reaction, decides to try one last trick to win Jak over. He hands him the Seal of Mar and simply states, "Remember who you are." After completing challenges for the precursors, Jak is given more light eco powers, which in turn give him a change of heart and decides he wants to help Haven City after all. With the Seal of Mar in his hands, he's able to access the catacombs below the precursor temple and is able to use this as a way to get back to Haven City. Travelling to the outskirts of the city, Jak and Daxter arrive at an old eco mine where just by luck, Jak discovers more of Mars armour. The duo then run into Vigar, who goes on to explain that the catacombs themselves lead deep into the planet, where it is said that the precursors will bestow great power to anyone who can actually get there. This is also where Vigar reveals that he is the reason for the attack on the palace and wanted quick access to the catacombs himself, in order to lead the planet with a new light to destroy the shadows. In a classic case of the villain explaining their plan to the heroes, Vigar activates a precursor defense system in the hopes that it will defeat Jak and Daxter. However, the duo defeat the robot and make their way back to Haven City. Back in Haven City, Jak and Daxter have been completing tasks for old friends, and it is now that Jak obtains yet another piece of Mars armour. At this point, the precursors reveal what the Daystar actually is, and we find out it's actually a massive ship created by the Dark Ones. In simple terms, the Dark Ones are basically just precursors who have been corrupted by Dark Eco and want to spread their influence throughout the galaxy. The precursors state that the only way to defeat this ship that is coming is to activate the planetary defense system, so yet again Jak is tasked with the impossible task of saving the planet. Seriously, this guy has saved the planet twice and he's not even 30 yet. Skipping ahead, the monk has decided to make amends to Jak and Daxter as they now understand what the Daystar is and what it actually means. Apparently knowing the true intentions of a world-ending threat makes you a better person. Whilst this is happening, we find out that the Darkmaker's machines have attacked Spargus City, so Jak and Daxter must rush back in order to help with the defence. With a successful defence and the Darkmaker machines push back, Deimos, the king of Spargus, fully embraces Jak and Daxter as Wastelanders, and it is at this point that Deimos reveals to Jak that he was once the leader of Haven City until he was betrayed. And he gives Jak the final piece of Mars armour and explains to Jak how he was saving it for his own son. Jak understandably feels guilty for not having a gift to give Deimos, however Deimos simply says that by giving the Wastelanders hope, that is more than enough of a gift. Jak then runs into Errol once again, the very man who arrested him when Jak and Daxter first arrived in Haven City. However, this time he is more of a cyborg and has decided to fully side with the Dark Ones in the destruction of the planet. Yes, I know Jak and Errol have a major beef and a lot of the backstory of Errol I've skipped over for this video. However, if you would like to see a longer video where I talk about the entire trilogy in more detail, I will happily do that. At this point it is all go 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 and Jak and Daxter must rush to the catacombs in order to activate the planetary defense system. Meanwhile, running about the ruins of the old stadium, Jak and Daxter end up getting cornered by more of the Dark One's machines, and at this point they believe this is the end and that their adventures together have been the best part of their life. However, this is not the end, as Deimos, the hero that he is, decides to crash through the wall with a Wastelander vehicle, ultimately destroying all the machines in Jak and Daxter's path. The three team up and make their way to the catacombs entrance until ultimately the vehicle is destroyed by some sort of rocket. Unfortunately, Deimos is mortally wounded in the crash and Jak rushes over to his aid. Whilst dying in Jak's arms, Deimos simply states that it was a good day to die and wants Jak to make him a promise. The promise being that Jak should go out and find Deimos' long lost son named Mar, and that the way to identify this child is by a Seal of Mar amulet hanging around their neck. This leads to Jak finally understanding that Deimos was his father, but unfortunately Deimos died before finding out that Jak was his own son. Talk about a kick in the balls. Little shit Vigar then appears and tells Jak that he knew Deimos was his father all along but decided to keep the info to himself just to be a right prick. Vigar then flees into the catacombs in order to get to the precursors in order to obtain the precursor power that he so dreamed of, and rightfully so, Jak, being absolutely pissed, decides to give chase. Jak and Daxter then somehow make it to the precursor defense platform before Vigar, and upon activating the defense system, the precursors offer Jak this new power, but from the shadows Vigar appears and takes the power for himself. Vigar then feels all powerful with his new godlike powers. However, the moment is ruined when the precursors make a cataclysmic error to their image, and we find out that the precursors actually look like Daxter. Now, the precursors actually do have their vast amounts of power, but given what they can do, it did not add up to how they look. hence the reason for the whole Wizard of Oz type technique. Vigor's whole purpose in life is now completely shattered by the knowledge that the precursors actually look like Ottslos, and decides to no longer fulfill his dream. However, it is also at this point that Vigor himself turns into an Ottsel, and thus ultimately destroying his whole motivation and character. The precursors send Jak and Daxter to the Darkmaker ship through a portal, which eventually leads to them destroying the ship, but not before Errol escapes to the planet's surface in a giant Darkmaker's walker thing. Back on the surface, Jak and Daxter give chase to the giant walker and a climactic battle ensues. With a well-placed shot, Jak is able to destroy the ship and Errol along with it, saving the planet once and for all. Jak and Daxter return to Spargus as heroes, and for his efforts in the war, the precursors offer Jak a place on their ship to travel the universe and fight the war against the Dark Ones. Jak refuses this offer as he simply thinks it wouldn't be the same without Daxter by his side. Finally, Jak then decides to take on the name his father gave him and decides to become known as Mar, and they all live happily ever after. The end. So, we have two theories for this game. Jak is simply a descendant of Mar. Not a lot to go with this theory, as it's really how the game intended it. When you arrive in Haven City in the second game, you find the little boy who then is revealed to be young Jak, although he's called Mar. He is Deimos' son, and Deimos is obviously part of the Mar lineage. So there's really not a lot to go with. It's simply, there was Mar back in the past. He did all these great things. He's the savior of Haven City / creator of Haven City. He's like a bit of a messiah in the Jak and Daxter universe. He had the son, eventually Deimos, descendant, has a son called Mar. Mar, we find out, is Jak, and that's it. So Jak is Mar. He is named after the Mar, and he is a descendant. Really simple theory, like nothing to it.
So what we're saying is he's named after himself.
Yeah, it's almost like Deimos named his son Mar as a sign of respect to Deimos' ancestor, who was Mar.
Who was in fact his son.
No, the most simplest approach is you had Mar back in the day, godlike figure to the humans. Eventually, he passes away. Who knows what happens to him? He passed away. The lineage continued. We got to Deimos, who was the king of Spargus, who was also originally the king of Haven City, or the leader. He then has a son called Mar, and the other Mar, not being the same person, it's just he named him Mar as a sign of respect.
So much like we got an idea where they just named them the same name. Got you.
Yes. Right, okay, now we get other theory that Jak is actually the original Mar. And I've got to give credit to this Reddit user because he summarized everything that I was thinking about. This theory basically is Jak, as in the one we know, is a time traveler, and eventually he will go on to become the legendary Mar, go back way before all of this happened and set the legend in motion. And it's not technically the worst theory because time travel's already existed in this universe. You know, Jak from the Precursor Legacy went to the future, which actually was the past.
If you travel to the past, that past becomes your future, and your former present becomes the past, which can't now be changed by your new future.
It's also found out that in old Naughty Dog, developer stuff, basically there was an original idea that Mar had a ship called the Time Cutter. It was obviously cut from the game, but there was going to be a ship called the Time Cutter that you would explore. And I mean, what else can I say? The ship was called the Time Cutter. It looked like a time machine, basically, which adds on to the whole idea that, you know, Mar used time travel as a means to either escape or just used it as a way to travel the universe. But there's several voice lines in the game that sort of allude to this idea that, you know, time travel / past, present, future, they all kind of coexist with each other, and that Jak looks like he's got some sort of ability to use time travel.
From before time, I have watched and waited for the true hero to return.
As a sage of considerable years, I have known only one such great ordeal. Yet the hero it created was a champion for all time. I've got a feeling we'll meet Mars someday. He may be closer than you think.
We saw the time travel potential in you from the beginning. You have a true gift.
Dude, there are way more challenges in the future.
Or was it the past?
Yes, I was getting to that.
Power of a time-traveling god. I always find it interesting, these ones. Because what happens if they went back in time and killed a younger version of himself.
Would he simply cease to exist, sort of thing?
Or would he be able to actually do it?
Maybe if it's one of those time travel rules where if you cause like a major event to occur, you change the timeline where you go off in your own version of the timeline. Like there's a schism that forms.
Cannot travel in your own time stream, which is already proven wrong because he sent himself back.
Anyway, let's move on to our next step in this theory. So it's also shown that, you know, the armor that Mar got, sorry, the armor that Jak got, it was carefully fitted to him, despite being the armor for someone else. Like, it's almost too perfect for it not to be Mar's armor. The final part of this theory is that, very simple one, but in this universe, they're called humans, but they've got ears like elves. They're all pointy, they're all like long, but they all have a similar shape. However, Jak's ear at the very end has a sort of like cut in it, which seems very unique to his character. And if you look at some of the statues of Mar, the ears have the same cut out shape in them. So again, that's a bit of a, that could just be design choice for the characters, but why would it match so perfectly for Jak and Mar? So yeah, that's the theories. The one super simple one, the other one time travel Terminator style where there's like a time loop and it's got to be fulfilled sort of thing. But again, because the trilogy ended at a certain point, we don't know if Jak eventually finds this spaceship to go back way before the first game. We don't know. It's just sort of left up to the, like, what they think is the outcome. Personally, I think it's just simply Jak is a descendant. There's nothing else to it. But with the theories of Jak being Mar, like, there's a lot that lines up for it to be a valid theory. I don't know. So that's the two theories. So, do you believe he's Mar?
Yeah, I've already got time loops. So what's another one? Time travel exists. It looks like him. If it looks like a duck, it is a duck. Therefore, Jak is Mar.
Well, there you have it. A pretty split vote on what is the correct theory. One person believes Jak is Mar, and the other believes Jak is actually just a descendant of Mar. If you made it this far, we really appreciate it, and hopefully we can continue to make these videos. Goodbye.